Okay, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 9, Text 20 and 21. Only 20s on the board? 20. Okay. Nanyair adishtitam bhadra Yadbrajishnu druvakshiti Yatra graharkshataranam Jyotisham chakra ahitam Nanyair adishtitam bhadra Yadbrajishnu druvakshiti Yatra graharkshataranam Jyotisham chakra ahitam Nanyair adishtitam bhadra Yadbrajishnu druvakshiti Yatra graharkshataranam Jyotisham chakra ahitam What did you say? Dadishtam druvakshitihi Yatra kritaranam Jyotisham chakra ahitam. I will chant through number 21. Medyam go chakravastashnu Parastat kalpavasinam Dharmogni kashyapa shukro Munayo yeva naukshaha charanti dakshini kritya brahmanto yat satarakaha. Word for word. Na, never. Anyaihi, by others. Adishtitam, was ruled. Bhadra, my good boy. Yat, which Brajishnu, brightly glowing, Druvakshitihi, the land known as Dhruvaloka, Yatra, where, Graha, planets, Riksha, constellations, Taranam, the stars, Jyotisham, by luminaries. Chakram, encirclement. Ahitam, is done. Medhyam, around the central pole. Go, of bulls. Chakra, a multitude. Vat, like. Stashnu, stationary. Parasat, beyond. Kalpa, a day of Brahma. Millennium. Vasinam, those who live. Dharmaha, dharma. Agnihi, Agni. Kashyapaha, Kashyapa. Okashaha, living in the forest. Charanti, move. Dakshini, Dakshini Kritya, keeping it to their right. Brahmantaha, circumambulating. Yat, which planet? Satarakaha, with all the stars. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead continued, My dear Dhruva, I shall award you the glowing planet known as the pole star, which will continue to exist even after the dissolution of the end of the millennium. No one has ever ruled this planet, which is surrounded by all solar systems, planets and stars. All the luminaries in the sky circumambulate this planet, just as bulls thread around a central pole for the purpose of crushing grains. Keeping the pole star to the right, all of the stars inhabited by the great sages like Dharma, Agni, Kashyapa, and Shukra circumambulate the star, which continues to exist even after the dissolution of all others. Purport. Although the pole star existed before its occupation by Dhruva Maharaj, it had no predominating deity. Dhruvaloka, our pole star, is the center of all other stars in our solar system, which all of them circle around Dhruvaloka, just as a bull crushes grains by walking around and around a central pole. Dhruva wanted the best of all planets, and although it was a childish prayer, the Lord satisfied his demand. A small child may demand something from his father which his father has never given to anyone else, yet out of affection the father offers it to the child. Similarly, this unique planet, Dhruvaloka, was offered to Maharaj Dhruva. The specific significance of this planet is that until the entire universe is annihilated, this planet will remain, even during the devastation which takes place during the night of Lord Brahma, which are two kinds of dissolutions. One during the night of Lord Brahma, and one at the end of Brahma's life. At the end of Brahma's life, selected personalities go back home, back to Godhead. Dhruva Maharaj is one of them, and the Lord assures Dhruva that he would exist beyond the partial dissolution of the universe. Thus, at the end of the complete dissolution, Dhruva Maharaj would go directly to Vaikuntha Loka, to the spiritual planet in the spiritual sky. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this connection that Dhruva Loka is one of the lokas like Svetadweep, Mathura, and Dwarka, which are all eternal places in the kingdom of Godhead, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita, Tad Dharma Paramam. In the Vedas, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. The words Parastat Kalpavasinam, transcendental to the planets inhabited after the dissolution, refers to Vaikuntha planets. In other words, Dhruva Maharaj's promotion to the Vaikuntha Lokas was guaranteed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Mukam kuroti vachalam pangulam gayate girim yakripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Indrijumna Swami Dhanamane Namo Prabhupada Purusaya Jagannath Yatmanandamurti Paksukena Krishna Kirtanena Narsimhena Rakshatayan Maha Pancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai. So today I'll try speak something. I'm very ill prepared, but I'll try. So today in the verse, we're hearing how the Lord is bestowing upon Dhruva Maharaj this planet which was never before predominated by any deity. This sometimes is difficult to understand, like in the pastime of Narada Muni, right? Which kalpa did this happen? In which manvantar did this happen? At what point in the creation of the universe did this happen? Because if you think about it, that Dhruva Maharaj went to Vaikuntha Loka, that means he's an eternal being. So then the time and space relativeness for us is a little bit confusing sometimes. But we have to understand that the Lord puts all these devotees, even if they're eternally in the spiritual world, he puts them again through this life for us to be able to listen to their pastimes, to be able to understand and learn from the process in which these devotees have achieved the ultimate goal, right? So even though they're eternal beings and they're eternal devotees of the Lord, because they're so surrendered that they allow, I wouldn't say they allow the Lord, but they're absolutely fine with the Lord making them come down again or making them take birth again and making them go through the process again in order to help millions of people who have been hearing this story also achieve the ultimate goal, right? And so Dhruva Maharaj, after all these austerities and being able to see the Lord is bestowing to him his childish desire, as Prabhupada puts it, right? It was a childish desire that he wanted the greatest planet, he wanted the greatest kingdom, he wanted all the wealth greater than his great-grandfather, which is Lord Brahma. And the Lord fulfilled his desire, even though Dhruva Maharaj no longer wanted it, right? After seeing the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was very repentant, basically saying that, I came to you looking for broken pieces of glass, and you gave me diamonds in the form of your pure love. But still the Lord is fulfilling this desire because he wants to be near his devotee. And where is the Lord? The Lord is also there. Nearby Dhruva Loka, he's there in Shweta-dweep, he's there in the ocean of milk, and so therefore he has the opportunity to be with his pure devotee. So it's for both ways. This explanation is given by some of our senior devotees that the Lord also wants to be reunited with his devotees. And so he facilitates their desire in both ways. One way is that they receive their goal, and the other way is that they achieve eternal association with the Lord. And so Dhruva Maharaj here, there's two ways of understanding it. As Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur points out, that Dhruva Loka is an eternal place, just as Shweta-dweep, Mathura, and Dwarka. Right? So in one way, it's already part of the Vaikuntha planets. In another way, the Lord assures that after the dissolution of this universe, he will go to Vaikuntha Loka and assemble there in the eternal Dhruva Loka that's in the spiritual world, if that makes sense. It's kind of like an expansion of the Dham. Mathura in the spiritual world, Mathura in this world, And so the Dham expands according to the desires of the Lord in the pastimes he wants to enact. So this another point that's brought out in the purport is that even though something may be very dear to the father, right? Prabhupada points out, a small child may demand something of his father which his father has never given to anyone else. Yet out of affection, the father offers it to the child, right? So Dhruva Loka was the Lord's planet, and it always has been that way. But out of affection for Dhruva Maharaj, he gave it to him, even though it was something he was not going to give to anyone else. So Prabhupada is pointing out the dearness of the Lord and his willingness to fulfill any desire of the devotee. He has no attachments for himself apart from pleasing his devotees. And so therefore he's willing to give something that might have been very dear to him. And it's fine for him. And so he gave it to Dhruva Maharaj, even though Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy. But first, of course, Dhruva Maharaj had to rule over his father's kingdom for many, many thousands of years. And then at the time of death, Dhruva Maharaj was going to go to Dhruva Loka, and he was going to stay there until the end of Brahma's life. And at the end of Brahma's life, then he would go to Vaikuntha Loka. Yeah? So it's a long process, but Dhruva Maharaj got all his desires fulfilled, both spiritual and material, simply by seeing the Lord. And so one of the big purports to this story of Dhruva Maharaj is that it doesn't matter your desire or what you're looking for, going to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, is the greatest, right? The greatest path, the quickest path, and the most achievable path for us as devotees. Other demigods, they need different austerities, different performances that might be more difficult, but all the Lord asks for is to chant my holy name, worship me alone, right? And surrender unto me. That's it. It's so simple. There's actually a pastime that during Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur's time, he had many Gauriya mutts, and there was one Karmakanda person who had an intense desire to go to heaven, and he wanted to stay there for the longest time possible and achieve the greatest place. So he was searching through the Vedas, trying to figure out the way to do the most benefit, least amount of time, and get the best result. And so he found that performing activities in the Dham gives you greatest result. And he was like, okay, so it has to be in a Dham. And then he was thinking, what activities? So he was looking through it, and then it's a devotional service. So he was like, okay, so I'll go join a mat. I'll perform devotional service in the Holy Dham. I'll get the greatest benefit, and I'll be able to go to Svargaloka for eternity. Right? That was his conclusion. And he went and he joined the mat, even though his goal was Svargaloka, to achieve, Amaravati, to achieve the same platform as Indra. He joined Krishna consciousness. And eventually, through purification, of course, that went away. But you see that even his desire was that. And he had no desire to become purified. That happened by the mercy of the holy name and the association of devotees. But by studying, vigorous studying of the sastras, he came to the conclusion that this is the best path, to achieve heavenly planets. And so he joined the mat, and he was a very good brahmachari, very diligent, performing his duties, doing extra service, especially on festival days, because he knows the benefit piles up. So he was really working it like a business, trying to get the greatest benefit. But he got purified. Unfortunately for him, like Dhruva Maharaj, right? He got purified, and he no longer wanted those desires. But maybe at the end of his life, the Lord fulfilled both desires. We don't know. But it's just a pastime to show the importance and the simplicity of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter your desire. Going to Krishna is the best option. And your desire will be purified, and you'll get something even better than what you asked for. Dhruva Maharaj went there looking for broken glass, and he got diamonds. So that is one of the purports of the story. That doesn't matter what your desire, go to Krishna. He will purify the desire and give you more than what you asked for. So what other choice do we have? Is there any? Yes? Sorry. I'll speak slower, my bad. So it doesn't matter what your desire is, you should surrender to Krishna. Yeah? Because otherwise there's all other paths are very cumbersome, difficult, and you have to struggle with your mind by artificial restraint of your senses. And it's pointless. So this is something we can definitely learn from this purport. One other thing that I wanted to talk about today, and I was thinking about for a while, was the idea of deity worship and the idea of understanding that we must elevate our level, our understanding of cleanliness, suchi, muchi, all these different things, to the Lord's standard, right? Sometimes when we're performing our daily activities and services, we tend to be a little negligent in our use of how we maintain things clean or impure. When we're doing deity worship, for those who perform deity worship, you'll understand simple things, like let's say we have what's called the Visarjana Patra, right? Where we put all the water that we offer to the Lord inside. It's a receptacle, a bowl. So when we offer something for the Lord and we're washing his hands, that water goes inside that bowl, right? We wash his lotus feet, that water goes inside that bowl. Everything goes inside that bowl. For us, that bowl is the greatest amrita, the greatest nectar, right? It's the Lord's Mahaprasadam, it's his Charnamrita, it's everything. But for the Lord, what is it? What is that for the Lord? For the Lord, that's his spittoon, that's where he spits, that's where he washes his feet. So we do not put that right next to what hasn't been offered to him, right? We do not touch that to his boga. We do not touch that and then touch the Lord, right? You wouldn't touch the sink and then immediately wipe your face, would you? Right? If you had a sink and you washed the sink, you would wash your hands really well afterwards before touching your face. But because sometimes we're not thinking like that, we touch something that's his Mahaprasad and then immediately touch something that we're going to offer to him. Because for us, they're all on the ultimate level, but for the Lord, it's not. And so when we're performing our daily services, like in the kitchen, I see a lot of sometimes a Mahaprasad bowl will be put onto a table that's right next to the boga, for example, or even touching the boga, and we don't think about it. But for the Lord, that's not considered pure. For the Lord, that's something that he ate already. Let's say you had a plate that you already ate, and you put it on top of all the stuff that you're going to eat tomorrow. Even you wouldn't do that for yourself. Doesn't matter how impure you keep your house, you wouldn't do that. Right? You have a bowl of half-eaten Cheerios or lasagna, and you put it on top of your boga that you're going to eat tomorrow, even if you're not going to offer it. So I think we have to become a little bit more conscious just in our things connected to that in the kitchen, things connected to that in the pujai room. Whenever we touch something that's maha, we should wash our hands before touching something that's boga. And like that's what the acharyas mean by deity worship brings purity. It makes you conscious, even on the subtlest, more subtle levels. It makes you more conscious of purity, purity of mind, purity of actions. And therefore you're raised to the platform of the Lord. When it says raised to the platform of the Lord, it doesn't mean you become the Lord. No, it means you become an ideal servant and you understand the difference. You become more conscious. Prabhupada says if you want to become Krishna conscious, you first must become conscious. Right? Many examples are given of that. So if we want to become Krishna conscious, we have to start understanding what the Lord is doing and how we can serve Him better. So this is something that I wanted to talk about actually for a while. A lot of the times, other things like when we're transferring the prasadam, and we put all the prasadam on the tables, on the counters. And then after that, someone comes to cook and they immediately put the bhoga on those same counters. We didn't wipe after it. And no one sees that or no one understands, and that's considered impure. In Sanskrit or in Sastra, that's considered prasadi. Prasadi means something that wasn't offered, but has become impure by touching something that was offered. So it's no longer fit for the Lord. And in Karma Kanda, that would become what's offered to the spirits. That's considered not offerable for the Lord. Of course, Krishna, out of causeless mercy, He doesn't take offense, especially if we're not conscious. But we should try developing that understanding of purity on the highest level, which means the Lord's level. For us, prasadam is the greatest amrita, but for the Lord, it's something He already ate. Yeah? So this is just something I thought would be nice to talk about. And another aspect of deity worship that helps us become more conscious is how we cleanse ourselves and how we dress ourselves, the way in which we prepare ourselves for performing puja. So there's 3 different levels of purity. There's, of course, that purity of physical form, yeah, purity of mind, and then purity of words, what we speak. So these 3 things affect our being or who we are at different times of the day. So in the morning, of course, we take bath, right? And we put on our dhotis, we put on everything nice and clean to perform our puja, to perform our services. But then what are we doing to purify our mind? As devotees who don't do puja, we know that we sit down, we chant our rounds, and therefore we're purifying our mind. We're here, we're seeing the Lord, singing His holy name, we purify our mind. Right? And we stop ourselves from speaking unnecessary things or things that are contaminating to our mind, and therefore we remain pure. But in puja, there's something called purvanga karma. Purvanga karma is a preliminary activity that brings yourself to the understanding of what you're about to do and prepares yourself for what you're supposed to do. This purvanga karma aspect can be used in every part of our daily life. Right? It's what's called also sambandha. We have sambandha, abhideya, prayojana. Every activity that we're going to perform should be done with this preliminary preparation to do it in the best possible way. An example that was always given to me was kind of like if you're going to cook and you didn't prepare anything. You run into the kitchen, you grab one vegetable from the cellar, you come out, you start preparing that, and you forgot, oh, I also need that. You run all the way back, you get something else, then I need to do this, and you put it on the pot. Then you start preparing something else, that starts burning. Oh no, you start mixing that, then this is getting late. And it's just one thing after another goes wrong. Why? Because failure to plan is planning to fail. That's the common saying, right? So this purvanga karma aspect, when we do puja, we are first purifying ourselves with achaman, right? Then after we purify ourselves with achaman, we purify ourselves with the holy name by remembering the Lord. There's that famous verse, Pavitro Pavitrava Sarvastam Gatopiva Yasmarit Pundarikaksham Sarvabhyantara Suchihi. By remembering the Lord, by remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, by remembering His face, everything becomes pure, whether it's pure or not pure. So we chant that verse, we chant many other verses, and we are purifying ourselves, putting ourselves in the proper understanding that we are the servant. Once we achieve that understanding, then we worship the Guru. Because we understand that nothing that we're going to do is successful without first worshiping Him. And He is the one who gave us permission. Once we worship the Guru, we worship Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Why do we worship Gauranga Mahaprabhu? Because He is the one who gave us the holy name. Without Him, where would we be? And then once we worship Gauranga Mahaprabhu, then we can worship the Lord. So we worship through those 3 people, right? Guru, Gauranga, then Krishna. And so that purvanga karma we do before we start doing anything else. Before we start worshiping the Lord, before we even start entering into the altar, we perform our purvanga karma because we have to make ourselves ready. So this same aspect of purvanga karma we can do, doesn't matter what we're going to do. We first put ourselves from the day before, we start thinking about what am I going to do the next day? How am I going to do it? What am I going to have ready to do it? And then in that way, when you perform your activity, it will be the most successful because you've already come prepared. You've come already with an idea of exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and it comes very smoothly. Another thing that you'll notice that will happen when you prepare yourself like this is you can be much more Krishna conscious while performing your service because there's less stress. You already planned everything in your mind. Then you can focus actually on the abhideya. The sambandha has already been done. The sambandha of establishing your relationship to the field of activity has been done. You know what you're going to do. Then the performance of abhideya is so much more relishable because you're prepared for what you're going to do. And then you can simply focus on the Lord. You can focus on performing the activity to the best of your ability. You don't have to run to the other room to grab a spoon or run to the other room to grab this spice or that spice or do this or that. It's all done already. In Purvanga Karma also what we do is we prepare the place of worship. So we have all the trays of different items we have to offer. We have all the proper water there. We have the Lord. We have everything ready, so we don't need to get up once we sit down. That's incomplete worship. So same thing, doesn't matter what you're going to do in the morning, doesn't matter what form of worship you're going to do, whether it's chanting your rounds or everything else, have everything done before it and have that mindset ready, right? There's one book called Pradambika Kalpamanjari, which means understanding the preparation or understanding the rules and regulations to the fullest extent. And so in that book is described that before you go to sleep, one should think about what one did that day and think about what one will do tomorrow to better himself, to better your devotional service. When one wakes up, the first thing that one should do is, of course, pay obeisances to the Lord, to the spiritual master. In the bed, right, before even standing up, one should pay obeisances to the spiritual master, and then immediately start thinking about how he's going to worship the Lord that day. Right? Not all the problems he's going to have, but preparing oneself to all the different things that you're going to do that day, that you're going to achieve that day, that you want to do better than you did the day before. Right? Then you understand that everything that you're doing in the morning, from brushing your teeth, cleaning your tongue, all the way, all the way to getting dressed and applying tilak, is all part of your purvanga karma. It's all part of your daily worship. Right? If one is going to approach the Lord, one has to approach in a clean state. By taking bath, one's purifying himself. Why do we brush our teeth? So when we speak to the Lord and we offer prayers, he doesn't have to cover his nose. Right? We brush our teeth, we clean our tongues so our breath doesn't smell. So when we speak to the Lord, when we're talking to the Lord, when we're worshiping him by chanting mantras, it doesn't smell bad for him. Something so simple. Why do we cut our nails? So that when we're touching him, we don't have to touch all these disgusting things that are stuck under our nails. Right? Everything we do can be connected to your deity worship, and that's how 24 hours a day becomes Krishna conscious. That's how, because everything you do, doesn't matter what you're doing, if you're thinking it in connection to your puja in the morning or in connection to your sadhana, it becomes all part of your sadhana. Either preparation or having yourself most suitably ready to do it in the best way. You go to sleep on time. Why? So that you can wake up not tired and do all your services properly. So why do you go to sleep? Not so you can sleep well. No, so you can do your services in a better way. So like that, 24 hours a day. And there's actually a very nice description of every activity, why we dress in a certain way, why we put our tilak on a certain way, what's the purpose of it, why do we wash our hands in a certain way, right? And in Hari Bhakti Vilas? Hari Bhakti Vilas, yes, in Hari Bhakti Vilas. I was speaking actually yesterday with Sanjay, and he was asking me some questions about the offenses, offenses to the deity that's described in Nectar of Devotion, right? And one of the things that are described in Hari Bhakti Vilas is that one should not pay obeisances to the Lord having his chest covered or having himself with the upper cloth, right? So this is kind of like an esoteric, deeper question, and it's like, why would that need be there? Isn't it like a little bit fanatical that one should take off his chadar, one should take off his clothes in front of the Lord? But it's not so much that, it's understanding that you are his servant. And so to have yourself covered like this, have yourself covered and nicely dressed in that way is kind of like you're coming with already an ego, with an identity. One should be ready to completely strip oneself of one's false ego, one's identity before the Lord. Understand, I'm a servant. I am nothing in front of you. I have no status apart from being your servant. And so even in Mayapur, I was telling Sanjay Prabhu that in Mayapur, Jananivas Prabhu, he would always do that. Sometimes I didn't know what he was doing until I read it, and I was like, oh, okay, makes sense. He would take off his chadar, he would take off his bead bag, place it in a nice place, and play full dandavats. And when you see it, even though you didn't know the rule, you didn't know the meaning of it, you would understand that that was his purpose, because his mentality was so perfectly in that way that you would understand, yes, he is fully surrendering himself to the Lord. We wouldn't come, even the thought doesn't come to you that that's weird, or why is he doing that? No, he's a servant and he's fully surrendering himself to the Lord. He would take off his chadar and pay obeisances, bare-chested. And it was so evident like that, you never needed to be explained, but when you read that thing, it made sense. That's why. So yes, here it's cold, maybe it's not the best thing, we have tons of sweaters on, it's a little bit more difficult, but that mentality should be there in our head. We give up all our previous identity. What are we? There's that verse, right? Naham vipro nachanarpatir napi vaishuna shudro naham varni nachigripatir novanastiratirva kintu prodyan nikila paramananda purnamritabdir gopi bhartav padakamale or dasadas anudasaha. Right? You chant this verse before puja sometimes? And it's part of Purvanga karma. And this verse is saying that I am not a Vaishya, right? I'm not a Naham Vipra, I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra. I'm not a Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. All I am is the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis who are the servant of Srimati Radharani. That's all you are. And so if you have this mentality when you pay obeisances to the Lord, that is what's expected. And so there's so many rules and regulations that assist in that, and assist in getting our mentality to that point. And if we perform them, it's the easiest way of doing it. So, in summary, having this element of sambandha, doesn't matter what activity we're going to perform, is supremely beneficial for us. Yeah? So we should have that practice of whatever we're going to do. It doesn't matter if it's construction work. Think about what you need to do, how you need to do it. Make sure you have all the tools in the right place. The other day, I wanted to do something in the workshop, and I said, I'm not going to go do it. Because I'm going to spend an hour looking for tools, I'm not going to have enough time to do the thing because all the tools are a mess. No sambandha, how am I going to be able to do it? So I decided to go do something else that everything was prepared for. Right? And some other time, I'm going to make that my mission and just go and sort out the tools. So if you don't have your preparation done, you'll see that all that will come from your activity will be frustration. Will be at the end of your cooking, at the end of your puja, at the end of your cleaning, whatever it'll be like, oh, you won't be thinking about the Lord. You'll be thinking about why that person kept it there, why this is not clean, why that's not put in the right place, why this wasn't right. I was just stressed, this burnt, that wasn't cooked properly. And what will be the result of your devotional service? Right? So we should get in that habit of proper preliminary activities, putting our mind, body, and everything we can prepared for whatever activity we're going to do. And if we practice that, we're going to do it also in our devotional service. Right? Like today, I didn't prepare myself at all for this class. I didn't know that I was giving class until Subal Prabhu came and told me. I saw it the other day and I was like, okay, yeah, I have to give class on Tuesday. Didn't stick. Didn't do sambandha properly for the class. But luckily, I've been thinking about these different things for a while, and so I had a little bit of something to say. I've been thinking, okay, well, next time I give class, I'm going to talk about this. Next time I give class, I'm going to talk about this. So I had a little bit, but nothing in relevance to the purport so much. Of course, devotional service is relevant, but apart from that, not so much. So I hope that something made sense, something is there, some relevance, something connection. Oh, and one other thing, yesterday I was listening to Prabhupada Memories by Mukunda Maharaj. And one very amazing point was brought up that one reporter was asking Srila Prabhupada that what is the purpose of your movement? And Prabhupada said to become 100% Krishna conscious, to think of Krishna all the time. And the reporter said, that's very difficult to be God conscious or think about Krishna all the time. And Prabhupada said, no, it's not. And the lady said, how? And Prabhupada said, would you forget to leave your house without dressing up? Would you forget to leave your house without looking nice? He says, no, you wouldn't. So for us to forget Krishna is like forgetting to dress. It's that it becomes that much part of us that it's not like we cannot forget him. You're never going to forget him. So to reach that stage like Prabhupada is mentioning, we have to put Krishna consciousness and devotional service above everything else. That is the most important thing. That is all that we think about. And the only way how we're going to achieve that is by connecting everything we do to Krishna. Right? Because then everything we do will remind us of Krishna, and we won't forget what we're supposed to do because we're remembering Krishna. So it goes both ways. You're brushing your teeth, you're thinking of Krishna. You're cleaning your house, you're thinking of Krishna. You're cooking, you're thinking of Krishna. You're driving a car, you're thinking of Krishna. Everything you'll think of Krishna because you're going to connect everything to Krishna. And then in that way it becomes very easy. It becomes something very natural. Yeah? Okay, so I'll finish there. If there's any questions or comments, it would be greatly appreciated. Yes, Prabhu.
Spontaneous lecture. I would please like to ask you about Dhruvaloka again.
Yes.
It was very inspiring to hear it because I was never really completely clear about this topic. And you explained it very nice, but somehow it was very quick and it was very ecstatic. But when you can gather it again a little bit, the details, it would be nice to again to.
Sure, bro. So,
from
my understanding, Dhruvaloka, right, of course, is in this universe still, but it also exists in the Vaikuntha planets because it's a place where the Lord performs his pastime with his devotees. All the lokas in the spiritual world are simply a place where the Lord is performing his pastime with devotees. And the more devotees that come with certain desires for the Lord facilitates that even by creating another planet. For example, Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev's desire was to fight with the Lord, to have that fighting spirit with the Lord. And so the Lord made a Vaikuntha planet where they're eternally in battle. And he's eternally enjoying that pastime with the Lord. So the Lord will go to any extent to please the devotee's desire because he wants to interact with that devotee on a personal level, right? I'm going a little bit off here, sorry. I forgot, Satyanandan Maharaj was talking, Radhanath Maharaj was talking, one of them. Anyway, they were speaking about how sometimes we may feel that, why does the Lord need us? Why does the Lord need us? He has so many people much greater than him. He doesn't miss anything that we have. And that was something that they were saying is not true because every individual jiva is an individual and they can please the Lord in a way that no one else can. Right? However, tiny bit, right now we may not feel our love for Krishna. We have that love. It's our jiva, our soul, us as a soul, has that relationship with the Lord, and we are missing that. We're just covered by so many different anarthas that we cannot see that. So the Lord is missing our true service, not who we may be covered by now, but our true identity and our true service that we can only offer to him. He's missing that in the spiritual world. And so the Lord will facilitate any way so that he's able to interact with us again in that way that he enjoyed so much and that we enjoyed so much. So Dhruva Maharaj, he was able to serve the Lord in the way as a servant, right? By offering prayers. That's how it's described. He achieved his, was it remembering the Lord or prayers for the Lord? Was it? I think his prayers was described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Dasyata Sakir Junaha. Yeah, we're offering prayers. And so the Lord wants to associate with Dhruva Maharaj. So he created this, the Dham expanded into this universe so that the Lord could facilitate that pastime with Dhruva Maharaj in this universe. And once this universe gets destroyed, Dhruva Maharaj simply gets taken to the Vaikuntha Lokas, where he's going to associate with the Lord in the same capacity. But Dhruva Loka inside this universe, right, has existed since time in memorial, right? And if Dhruva Maharaj lives as long as Brahma in Dhruva Loka, does that mean that on Brahma's day one, Dhruva Maharaj went to Dhruva Loka? Or at what point through the creation did Dhruva Maharaj go to Dhruva Loka? It becomes a little bit difficult to understand because time and space relevance for us is difficult to understand. But the Lord lets these pastimes, like the pastime of Narada Muni, happen again and again for us to be able to learn from them. Right? We have to learn from the pastimes of these devotees. And so the Lord lets these pastimes happen again and again, or lets them be described by Vyasadeva, so that we can hear about it and learn from those activities. But if we understand that Dhruva Maharaj is in Vaikuntha Loka, does that mean that this pastime happened in previous Brahmas in the past? No, it happened again and again. The Lord lets these pastimes happen again and again. Right? Sita gets captured every day of Brahma. Right? Not even every day of Brahma, every Dwapar Yuga, Sita gets captured by Ravana. Right? Happens every single time. And Jambavan is enjoying it every single time. Jambavan has been since the first day one of Brahma, he's been existing. And he's seeing this pastime happen again and again and again and again. And he never gets tired of it. Right? He's just playing his part in a play, it's described. He remembers everything, but he can't wait to see it again. What's Ram going to do different this time? Or is he going to do, wow, it's so cool. It's like watching your favorite movie. You can watch it again and again. The only difference is that you never get tired of it. Right? In devotional service, you never get tired of it, even though it's the same thing again and again. So like that, Dhruva Maharaj comes, he exhibits his pastimes with the Lord, and then he goes back to Vaikuntha Loka, and he comes down again, he does it again, we do it again, simply for the purpose for us to hear about it, learn about it, and have a way of connecting to the Lord. Does that make sense, bro?
Actually, this is like also eternal pastime with Dhruva, but somehow you told before, I don't know if it was, I remember right, that he was going to Dhruva Loka and after he got to the Vaikuntha planet.
Yes.
So, or is this I mean, it is like the Vaikuntha planets, but on the mature platform. Yeah,
like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that, comments in this connection that Dhruva Loka is one of the lokas like Svetadvip, Mathura, and Dwarka, right? These are Vaikuntha planets. Dwarka, Mathura, they're Vaikuntha planets. They expand in this universe for the purpose of the Lord's pastime.
That means it is in the material world, but it never goes away, and it stays. And
no, it says that at the end of Brahma's life, it gets destroyed and he goes to Vaikuntha planet. But when a new universe is created, it's again created.
And then again he comes down and like
the
still
pastime.
in the material, but on the spiritual.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an expansion of the Dham, like Mathura and Dwarka. But Mathura and Dwarka, they are annihilated. Not really, every day of Brahma, right? When the universe is destroyed and they're recreated because of the Lord's pastimes. But on differences, Dhruva Loka doesn't get destroyed until the end of Brahma's life. So it's stays longer in existence, but it's all depends on the Lord's pastime and his desire. That's it. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu. Subal Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice lecture. I was listening. So I have just one comment and one question about Dhruva Loka. Actually, 2 days ago in a Bhagavad Gita class in the pulpit, Srila Prabhupada writes also about Dhruva Loka, and this was quite interesting. And I was a little doubtful because he says there that devotees who are not completely pure yet, they go to Dhruva Loka to get their last purification, more or less. So that also more or less confirms that it's a material planet, but then later on devotees go to Vaikuntha of that planet probably.
It's a Dham. It's the Dham, like it's described here. Mathura, Dwarka, they're eternal Dhams. Okay. Yeah, but that's very, very far out. I've heard that too. Which chapter?
18th chapter, verse 71. Perfect.
Wow. So yeah, at the end.
And my question is, because today is also the appearance day of Shyamananda Prabhu, if you could maybe talk a little bit.
No, really?
Shyamananda Prabhu.
I should have prepared. Okay, I'll speak from what I know of Shyamananda Prabhu. Jai. Okay. So, Shyamananda Prabhu. Shyamananda Prabhu, of course, is one of the 3 greatest Sankirtan devotees, right? We have Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srinivasacharya. So these 3 devotees were the original first Sankirtan crew after Mahaprabhu left this world. And in Vrindavan, all the Goswamis are writing all their scriptures and everything. Mahaprabhu inspired these 3 devotees. They all have very individual stories to go to Vrindavan. They studied under Jiva Goswami, and once Jiva Goswami was ready, they took all these books and they were going to take it back to Navadvip. And so each of them have their own pastime of how they preached in a very big way. Shyamananda Pandit, before he became Shyamananda, his name was Dukhi Krishna Das. So Dukhi Krishna, at that time, his parents forgot the name of his parents, but his parents had many miscarriages. And one child after another was being taken away from them. So finally, when Shyamananda was born, in Bengal, there's a kind of a tradition that they give very sad names to children in these situations, like Nimai. Right, Nimai was also after many other children, and so they gave him the name Nimai because Nim is bitter, and so they said that death himself won't come and take Nimai because he's bitter, right? So they gave him the name Nimai, right? That was given by the wife of Advaitacharya. No, the wife of Chitra Takrani, right? And so Shyamananda, they gave him the name Dukhi. Dukhi means very sad. So they said that he's so sad that the death will come and see that he's sad already, so they won't take him. So he got the name Sad, right? Dukhi. So after many years, Dukhi, what's his name at that time, he came in contact with Hridaya Chaitanya. So Hridaya Chaitanya, of course, we know the pastime that Hridaya Chaitanya, he wanted, when Mahaprabhu was in the house, God, the names are escaping me. In Ambika Kalna, there was the house of, I forgot the name of the devotee. Anyway, Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they came to stay there. And when it was time for them to go, he said, no, Mahaprabhu, you cannot go. So Mahaprabhu said, okay, we'll build. Hridaya Chaitanya, but it wasn't his house. He was a disciple. Gauridas Pandit, yes, Gauridas Pandit. So he said, we'll make deities of ourselves, and we will go, and the deities will stay. So then they made deities, they put them there in the home, and they said, okay, we're going now. So Gauridas Pandit said, no, you can't go, you tell the deities to go, and you stay. So they went, stood on the altar, and the deities got up and started walking. And he said, no, you don't go, you stay. So like that, it went like 10 times, changing. And so finally, Gauridas Pandit couldn't take it anymore, he was just crying. And so finally, Nityananda and Chaitanya said, okay, fine, we will go into the heart of this boy, Hridaya Chaitanya. And so they went and they entered into his heart. That's why his name became Hridaya Chaitanya, because Hridaya, heart, and Chaitanya. So they entered into his heart. So we can understand that the elevated status of Hridaya Chaitanya. So when Shyamananda Pandit came in, Dukhi Das, Bhakta Dukhi, let's call him, he came in contact with Hridaya Chaitanya, he of course surrendered. And Hridaya Chaitanya, to test Dukhi, he told him that your service will be, you will have to take care of the flower garden and the tulsi garden that we have for our deities. So every day Dukhi would take the pot on his head of water, walk down to the Ganga, take the pot of water, carry on his head back and water the plants and water Tulsi Maharani. And he was singing and chanting, and he was doing this non-stop. It's said that he was taking so good care of the plants. On hot days he could go 100 times with the pot to bring water. And so because of that, a big bruise developed on his head where he was carrying the water, and it started bleeding and it became infected. But he was so oblivious to all of this, he just kept on carrying the pot back and forth. And so Hridaya Chaitanya, observing his disciple one day, seeing his absorption in Krishna's service, and so dedicated to such a menial service in our understanding, he completely... He was so happy with his disciple, he embraced Dukhi. And so all, of course, his wounds immediately got healed, and he initiated him and gave him the name Dukhi Krishna Das, because he is so enraptured in separation from the Lord. He's sad in the separation from Krishna. So Dukhi Krishna Das. And so Dukhi Krishna Das was instructed by Hridaya Chaitanya to go to Vrindavan and study under the Goswamis, to learn all the Bhakti Sastras and served there. So he went there and he got the service. Of course, he was studying, and he also got the service that he was supposed to clean Sevakunj, another quote-unquote menial service, right? In our understanding, right? He wasn't doing puja to the deity, he wasn't cooking, he wasn't being temple commander, he wasn't being temple president, he was sweeping around the pond in Vrindavan. And he was doing that to such dedication every single day. Every morning he would go and he would sweep. And he had also a little, like a spade that he would dig out weeds and different things and make sure it was very, very nice, the Sevakunj. And so one day, after many, many years, you can say, of Dukhi Krishna performing the service, one day when he was cleaning around a bush, his spade touched some ankle bells, and immediately his spade turned to gold. And so he was surprised. So he took these ankle bells and he was looking at them, and as soon as he touched these ankle bells, he went into prema. His body, his hair stood on end. He started crying profusely, and he understood that these ankle bells aren't anything normal. And so at that moment, one very young girl came and said, "Oh, you found the ankle bells. Can you please give them to me? I have to give them to my sister. She lost it yesterday." And something, of course, Krishna in the heart, inspired Dukhi Krishna to not just give the ankle bells back. He said, "How can I know that they belong to you? You're a simple cowherd girl. How can you possess something so valuable?" And so she said that, "No, my sister, she's very powerful. She has a lot of wealth, and so it belongs to her." He says, "Okay, it might belong to your sister, but how do I know that it's hers unless I see the other? It's kind of, you lose one, I should see the other so I can see they match, and I'll give it back to her." So she said, "No, you can't do that. You have to give them to me now." He says, "No, I'm not going to give it unless I see the other." Krishna was inspiring him from the heart. And so that little girl revealed herself and said that I am Lalita Devi, right? I'm Lalita Saki, and so if you want, you have to come with me. So he took Dukhi Krishna Das, and took him to the pond and said, if you want to come and see my sister, you have to first purify yourself. So bathe in this pond. So he bathed in this pond, and while bathing in this pond, he took on the form of his gopi, or who he was, which was Shyama Shaki. Shyama. Kanaka Manjari is Nartam Das Thakur. Kanaka Manjari. Anyway, I forgot. He took on his Manjari. Huh? No, Nanga Manjari is Radharani's sister. Anyway, he took on his Manjari form, and of course he went into ecstasy again. He realized what was happening. And so then Lalita Devi took her now, in front of Radharani. Radharani saw her. He got to see the other foot, the other ankle bell. He placed ankle bells back on Radharani. And Radharani blessed him in many different ways. And there was 3 main ways that she blessed him. The first was she took that ankle bell and she placed it on his head. And the marking of the ankle bell came onto his head. And that's why it looks like that, like if she's holding ankle bell and she touched it, so you see the drape, right, on his head. And it created a tilak that manifested there. Then she gave him the name Shyamananda. Shyamananda was the name because he's in so much bliss serving Lord Shyamasundar. And so that name appeared across his chest in Chandan, but it was effulgent. And the last thing was that she gave him a deity of Krishna, which was Lord Shyamasundar. Gave him a deity of Krishna that was from her own heart, her own mind created that deity, so you can imagine that deity. And she gave him a mantra, a specific Radha mantra that he was supposed to chant. That was basically his new initiation. So he got a new name and a new mantra, a new first initiation, right? And so he got many instructions for Radharani. She instructed him how to worship the deity. She gave 10 specific blessings of anyone who worships or serves that deity. It's very nicely described. You can listen to the lecture by my Guru Maharaj. There's 2 parts on Shyamananda. And that deity is now in Vrindavan, in Radha Shyam Sundar temple. The deity of Lord Shyam is there at little smaller deity. And so you can go and render any service to that deity and you'll hear the benefits. So then after this all happened, Lalita Saki took him back to Seva Kunj. He returned to his devotee form, but now with the name Shyamananda, right? So he was there in ecstasy, and immediately he went to Jiva Goswami with his deity of Krishna that was manifested by Radharani, and with his new tilak, his new name, and his new mantra. And he told Jiva Goswami everything that happened, and Jiva Goswami said, wow, this is really amazing, you know? And at that time, he named the deity, Jiva Goswami named the deity, that would be Shyamasundar. And so, after that time, Shyamananda Pandit continued doing his service in Seva Kunj and also started worshipping the deity. But after some time of worshipping the deity, of course, his fame spread all over Vrindavan. And people who were going back to Mayapur, they heard this pastime, and they, of course, heard it in the wrong way or told it in the wrong way. But when they got to Mayapur, they told Hridaya Chaitanya that your disciple has rejected you. He has taken on a new name and a new mantra. And so for Hridaya Chaitanya, knowing the truth, he wasn't offended, but he acted in that way so that he could protect the reputation of his disciple. He had to go and prove that his disciple was innocent, right? People are speaking such horrible things about his disciple. He had to go and prove he was innocent. Even though Hridaya Chaitanya, knowing everything was okay, he had to go in the assembly of Vaishnavas, prove that he was innocent. So he went to Vrindavan, along with many other Mahants and great Vaishnavas. And in a great assembly, he told Shyamananda, so what is this? I heard that you took a new name, you took a new mantra, and you've rejected me as your spiritual master. And so Shyamananda said, no, I have never rejected. You're my spiritual master birth after birth, and this is what happened. And so Hridaya Chaitanya said, okay, if you want to prove that this is true, then I will rub off the tilak from your head and your name from across your chest. And if they appear on their own, we will know that this is the mercy of Radharani. So with the cloth, he rubbed off the tilak, he rubbed off the name. And so Shyamananda sat there and he chanted the Radharani mantra that he received from Radharani herself. No, from Lalita Devi. And he started chanting this mantra, and within the span of 20-25 minutes, the tilak reappeared and the name reappeared across his chest. So of course everybody, Hari Bol, they were so happy. And Hridaya Chaitanya was very happy as well and gave gave Shyamananda a big hug. And so they continued doing service. But one thing that was still disturbing Hridaya Chaitanya a little bit was that Hridaya Chaitanya, in his spiritual form, was a gopa. And Shyamananda, his disciple, has taken the side of the gopis. So it's like a transcendental little bit of a rivalry, because disciples should generally take on the same mood as the spiritual master. And so there was a pastime that happened that basically Hridaya Chaitanya was talking to Shyamananda Pandit, asking him about that, and Shyamananda Pandit was, discussing that it's okay. And so finally Hridaya Chaitanya, I forgot exactly what happened. But anyway, to be able to pacify Hridaya Chaitanya, because he was very disturbed about this, Shyamananda Pandit received in a dream a message from Radharani, and Radharani told him that he should explain to Hridaya Chaitanya that even in Vrindavan, even in Braj, the Gopas assist the Gopis in connecting Radha and Krishna. Like Madhu Mangal, he sends letters, Subal sends letters. They coordinate with each other to the joining. So there's no problem that a Gopa and a Gopi are serving Krishna together as guru and disciple as well. And so when Shyamananda Pandit described this pastime to Hridaya Chaitanya was very pleased and understood that his disciple is actually doing the proper thing and also has the blessings of Srimati Radharani. So Shyamananda Pandit, he became Shyamananda Pandit after he received full education from Jiva Goswami. And after receiving full knowledge about the Bhakti Sastras, when he, Srinivasacharya, and Narottam Das Thakur were going back to Mayapur, of course the pastime happened that the books of the Goswamis were stolen, right? The king received the word that these three people are carrying the greatest treasure. And so the king, wanting the treasure for himself, he stole the bullock cart, and it was just books. And so anyway, Srinivasacharya stayed there in that city to be able to retrieve the books, and Shyamananda Pandit went and started preaching in one area, and Narottam Das Thakur went and started preaching in another area. So even though they didn't have the books, they decided they needed to continue the preaching. And so Shyamananda Pandit, he was doing so many amazing feats. He would turn whole villages into devotees just by going there and preaching and performing kirtan. He initiated an elephant. We know Gopal Das was the name of his elephant disciple. The king, the ritualistic brahmanas went to the king and reported that Shyamananda is preaching Apasampradaya. He's doing something wrong. He's turning people away from the worship of Durga and Kalima. And so the king sent a war elephant. And I don't know if you've seen an elephant. Crazy. It's pretty, it's nothing you can do. It's like a force of nature, like a tsunami. You really feel that there's nothing and no one who can protect you when you see an elephant in rut, when they're angry like that. And war elephants are made to even be more crazy, right? So he sent his war elephant to the village where Shyamananda was performing his kirtan. And the war elephant started running and running and running towards Shyamananda, but instead of crushing Shyamananda, he fell at Shyamananda's feet. And Shyamananda said, "Why are you disturbing so many people? Why are you behaving in this way? You should serve the Vaishnavas, chant the Lord's name, and become peaceful." And so then and there he initiated the elephant. He gave him the name Gopal Das. So Gopal Das paid obeisances to the spiritual master and went to the forest. And there's many pastimes where he interacts with Gopal. Different pastimes. One time Shyamananda was in the forest traveling, and it was raining. They weren't able to go anywhere. They were under a banyan tree. They weren't able to eat. And so Gopal Das, sensing that his spiritual master was in trouble, he went and he begged from different houses. He somehow or another communicated with the houses that his spiritual master doesn't have anything to eat. And so they gave him a bag of rice and some fruits and vegetables, and he ran back to his spiritual master and gave them to him. His spiritual master gave him other instructions at that time. There's many pastimes like that. Shyamananda Pandit also, he had turned whole kingdoms into devotees, but he had also a great family. And this is actually before the whole pastime with Shyamananda where he became Shyamananda Pandit. He had a family, wife, kids, and everything. There's actually one pastime that he's greatly glorified for. One day he was in Navadvip, and Hridaya Chaitanya at that time was in Vrindavan. And Hridaya Chaitanya sent a message to call Shyamananda. And so Shyamananda was eating lunch at that time, and when the message came, it was while he was eating lunch. And Shyamananda just stood up, washed his hands, and left. He didn't pack a bag, he didn't do anything. Full surrender to his spiritual master that it took him months to get there. 5 minutes of preparation wouldn't have made a difference, but he was so surrendered that he felt anything that I do, apart from following my spiritual master's instruction to come, would be going against his order. So with no preparation at all, he just got up and started running towards the spiritual master, running to Vrindavan. A month at least, he was just running. He went straight to his spiritual master, and his spiritual master was very pleased to see him understanding what his disciple did. And they had a nice discussion. So there's so many things we can learn from the story of Shyamananda, but I would say the first and foremost was to not think some service minimal, to not think some service that is menial, to be unimportant or less important, because he achieved the greatest. I mean, you can't compare what he achieved by sweeping, right? By cleaning a garden every morning. And the garden would get dirty again during the day, leaves would fall, creepers would grow, and he would do it again. He would do it day after day after day, and he achieved the greatest success by doing that. So I think in this connection, Shyamananda Pandit should be celebrated for that. And one thing we should learn from him is that we should take every service we do to the greatest and do it with the greatest dedication, with the greatest surrender, and relish it to the greatest amount. Not think, oh, today I'm cleaning toilets, but tomorrow I get to, wash the Didi's Ma plate. No, we shouldn't think like that. We should do every service to the fullest extent, with full devotion, with full inspiration, with full enthusiasm, and then we will achieve the success. If we defer what we're doing, then we're not Krishna conscious. We're Krishna conscious when we're doing something, but not when we're doing something else. And that same contamination will apply through everything we do in our day. When we're in front of the deity, we're Krishna conscious. When we're at home behind closed doors, we're someone else. It's this two-faced. We can't be like that. Devotional service is devotional service. Yeah. So Shyamananda Pandit Ki. I'm very sad that I didn't know it was his birthday today, but I wish I was more prepared. Yes, Prabhu.
Was it also Shyamananda Pandit who went in ecstasy or in meditation and didn't come back? And then was he married? No, was it Shyamananda Pandit who was married to 2 wives?
2 wives? No, I remember one.
Or something, or the wife became worried, and then his disciple. Who was his disciple? He went also in meditation, and then he met him.
Oh, that pastime, I don't know. I've heard it one time. His disciple, that means Rasikananda?
Yeah, but we'll check it again. Maybe some other questions.
Yes, bro.
So we have 2 questions on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So one is from Ananda Krishna Prabhu and is asking, can you speak about the purity of the mind?
The purity of the mind. Okay. So this is obviously in connection to Purvanga Karma. So to purify the mind, it's rather simple on a temporary sense, very difficult on a permanent sense. When we are performing our deity worship, we should prepare our mind in a way that we're only thinking about how we're going to perform the service, and then while we're performing the service, thinking about Krishna. So something that I like to do, especially when I'm doing puja, is to, when I'm chanting my rounds, when I see my mind starting to go somewhere else, I'll think about what kind of turban I'll put on Krishna, what kind of dhoti I'm going to put on Krishna, what kind of cloth I'm going to put, what I'm going to do, what oil am I going to use that day, what incense am I going to use that day, if there's any flowers that I can go get. And then just start occupying my mind with preparation for the puja. I might not be thinking about the letters of the holy name or Krishna himself, but I'm thinking about how am I going to serve him. So I use my japa as part of my Purvanga karma. Right? And you can do this also for everything else, any other kind of service you're going to perform. You start thinking about how you're going to do it and occupy yourself and really prepare your mind in that way. Then when you're actually performing the service, you're thinking about Krishna. Then you're much more prepared and you're much more able to only think about Krishna while performing the service and think about how you're performing the service, how you're doing it in the best way, thinking about all the other things that you could be offering to the Lord, right? They say the physical worship of the Lord is simply via medium in which the mind can be occupied in serving the Lord, right? It's the true manasa puja, is if the mind is involved in your worship. Otherwise, your hands are doing gestures and you're waving lights and incense around the Lord, but that's not worship. The mind has to be involved. And so in your physical puja, you might be limited by what you can offer to the Lord because funds, time, facility, but your mind has no such limitations. So the more you're able to include the mind, then the mind becomes pure at that time. By doing this more and more and more, one's mind becomes occupied 24 hours a day in the service of the Lord, and therefore one's mind becomes much more pure. It's simply about focusing and not letting any other thoughts come into the mind apart from anything that's related to your devotional service. And it can be something small, like, oh, where's the broom kept, or how can I sweep the floor better, or it can be something more of how am I going to do the turban to learn the Shingadev, right? But as long as we're using the mind for the service of the Lord, then it's becoming pure. And to maintain the purity of the mind, one must practice this. Right? It's a skill, it's an exercise almost, that one must practice focusing the mind, just like when in japa, first round you focus on the Lord. Then next day, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, or 5 minutes, 6 minutes. 1 minute at a time, if you're increasing your focus on the Lord, you're making progress, and therefore you're purifying the mind. That makes sense, Prabhu?
The Krishna Prabhu is also mentioning that in answer to Ramananda's questions, that was Srinivasacharya, disciple, and disciple was Ramachandra Kaviraj. Then there is another question from Shireen Mataji. She's asking, why does Krishna give us some of his supreme qualities when we start to get purified and completely immersed in Krishna consciousness? Because I heard that these qualities don't need to be practiced, but only acquired.
Sorry?
I'll repeat again. So why does Krishna give us some of his supreme qualities when we start to get purified and completely immersed in Krishna consciousness? Because I heard that these qualities don't need to be practiced, but only acquired.
I'm not sure if I understand the question properly, but I can answer the way that I understand it. Right? There's 2 ways of understanding this. Yes, devotional service is something that cannot be, taken. It's something that should be bestowed upon us. And so one might think that how can I even practice qualities that I have no ability to get on my own strength? Yes, but on the other hand, everything we do in devotional service is something that we have not achieved. It was something that was given to us by causeless mercy. And it's simply now that we have it, we have to take advantage of it and therefore practice it. So it's not something that we are trying to get through our hard work. It's something that we're trying to take full advantage of. It's kind of like someone gives you a gift, but to utilize it in the best way is up to us, right? It's some gift that was bestowed upon us by causeless mercy. We can take it or leave it. Right, so it's not that we should just sit back and wait for those qualities or the full benefit of our devotional service to just come upon us. That's not going to happen. It's kind of Krishna gives us the ability to do something. We need to do it. So he gave us the facility to perform devotional service. Now we need to take advantage and engage ourselves to the greatest amount. Otherwise, there's no free will. Right? If Krishna just bestowed upon you pure Krishna prem and bestowed upon you full attraction and taste for devotional service, that's not really free will. That has to be something that we develop and we practice and we aspire for. And yes, when it comes to us, that's Krishna's mercy, whether that's this lifetime, next lifetime, 100 lifetimes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 hour, we don't know. But we have to work at it just with the same determination, like if we were going to die now, if we're going to die tomorrow. And then everything else we leave up to Krishna. So these qualities that we need to practice, yes, when we acquire them is not up to us. Right? But we need to strive and pray. So it's 2 hands. Full devotional service and trying your hardest, at the same time praying for the Lord's mercy. So we understand it's a gift and it's going to come when He wants it, but we need to work at it and show Him that we want it to be able to be not to earn it, but for Him to understand that we are eligible. It's like Maya is always testing you, always putting you through problems and putting you through so many anarthas. It keeps us focused on the holy name and keeps us focused on our Krishna consciousness. Krishna never gives us more than we can handle. And so if we want to show our dedication or show our ability to receive pure devotional service and receive Krishna bhakti, Krishna prem, we need to really show it. We need to really work at it. And then when Krishna decides, we'll get it. Then we will acquire it, but we still need to, by practice of devotional service and by practice of those qualities we want to imbibe, Krishna will see we're sincere. but we have no control over when we get it. I think that's more or less what the question was. So I hope I answered it. We'll finish.
I have a question also.
Sure.
Do you have some techniques or way how do you approach your planning for an activity? So, because you were speaking quite much about planning and the importance of it to be performing the mode of goodness also. And do you approach it more in a spontaneous way, like from inspiration, or you also like take some time to, I don't know, write down I don't know.
I mean, I write down things when it's something a little bit bigger that I feel that I'm going to forget. But if it's like daily cooking, daily puja, daily, different things like that, then I mentally think about it. And it usually takes me, I'm thinking about it from the day before. This kind of, if you're not doing anything anyway, you might as well think about what you're going to do the next day. So if your mind's idle, just think about, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and just start planning. And it really helps. It really helps. I mean, just because I always talk in connection to cooking, because that's what I mainly do. But, even if you don't know exactly what you're going to cook, if you know what you're doing more or less, or when you're going to figure it out, like you get to the kitchen, okay, even if you don't know what you're going to cook, you can at least plan that when I get to the kitchen, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what I'm going to cook. That's the first thing on my checklist. So you plan to plan. Right? That's still a plan. But if you walk into the kitchen and then you first start making the dal and making the rice and making the chapati dough, and you didn't even figure out what sabjis you're going to do, or if you have sabjis, or if you need to tell Brian Prabhu to go to the shop to get sabjis, you're going to be done. Right? Everything will be overcooked and soggy, and your sabjis haven't even started yet. So even if you can't plan exactly what you're going to do, you're planning to plan what you're going to do. Does that make sense? So everybody has their own system or their own way, but it just depends on the magnitude of what I'm going to do that I plan in a certain ways. But first and foremost, it's kind of, to do with cooking is what has just been cooked a few days, right? What would devotees like to have? This way, haven't made in a long time. I see morale is a little low. Let's make some sweet. Let's make some pasta. Let's make some, cake. If someone's birthday is coming up, find an excuse to make a feast, right? So different things like that. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish there. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Shyamananda Pandit ki, Sri Radha Shyamasundar ki, Jainitai Gaura Premanandi.